and what's the thing like I want to wake up to and do every single day. And that's at the end of the day, I told myself entrepreneurship. I enjoy building a company. And so that's what just like the hard work is the thing that kind of is like the motivator and fueling thing for me. And people always told me, like, hey, you want financial freedom. Like when money doesn't become an issue, you just like purely enjoy the work. I think that's when you kind of hit that like financial freedom thing. And just being able to take care of also like, my family, my friends, like those I care about, taking care of them, and then also giving back to like charity and like the things that I really care about.
Welcome to the BLUF Finance Podcast. I'm Erik Baskin, an Air Force Academy graduate, turned veteran entrepreneur, and certified financial planner. I help military families and veteran business owners achieve financial freedom. Join us weekly as we explore financial tips for the military community and inspiring interviews from successful veteran business owners. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. We are lucky enough to have a guest on today. Jason Lee is a fellow 2018 USAFA graduate, a friend and squad mate of my wife Shelly's back in the day. That's how we got introduced to each other. Has been in the real estate game for quite some time now, has gotten out, started his own business, Murphy Home Buyers in San Antonio, Texas. He's been a part of hundreds of deals now, and we will talk about that. Also the co-host of the Alamo City Investing Show. I've been watching Jason for a while now, and the content he's putting out and the business he's growing, it's been super impressive. So just had to have him on the show. Jason, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Eric. We were just talking before the show how crazy it is. It's been almost 6 years now since we graduated from the academy. And I just don't remember hanging out with Shelly and squad and trying to graduate at that point, being scared that we were getting kicked out for some random odd reason. But yeah, and it's exciting watching building the company and then watching you grow too. I love the stuff that you're putting out.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's academy's it's a different place. You got one focus, and that's graduation at that point. But yeah. I remember you always being interested in real estate, so it's awesome
Mhm.
seeing you follow that passion and watching you grow. So tell the people a little bit about, I guess, yourself, maybe a little bit about what you did in the Air Force and how you started getting interested in real estate, where that came from, and how that morphed into you getting out and building this company.
Absolutely. So my military experience, like Eric, graduated in 2018, commissioned as an officer, and so I always loved business. I knew I wanted to go and do acquisitions in the Air Force since it's the most business oriented. And at that point, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do, whether it's stay in the Air Force, get out and do something business related. But I thought acquisitions is something that's easily transferable, relatable to the outside world. So I was lucky enough and blessed enough to have gotten my first choice of acquisitions. They asked me where I wanted to go. For my preference, I put in all the big cities, LA, Boston, Florida, and they sent me down to San Antonio, Texas. And which was interesting to me because that was not even one of the options on the list of the 7 places I could have went to. So I always say it's a blessing though in disguise. This is where I ended up, meeting my wife, finding about real estate. But in San Antonio, I had no idea what I was doing. I thought I was going to buy. I was at Lackland, and which most people know is the training base for new Air Force enlisted folks. And so I thought I was going to be buying uniforms for these people, buying other training supplies. Turns out there's a really cool mission here in the cryptologic and cyber systems space. So they develop like the crypto for the Air Force and as well as like the cyber capabilities for the Air Force as well. So for the first half of my career, I was over on the cyber side, specifically defensive cyber, working with companies to basically develop capabilities that we can put in the warfighter's hands. And then the second half, I worked over on the cryptologic side. And that is for those who aren't familiar, pretty much it's like encrypting communications and information. So adversaries can't, I guess, listen in to our intelligence. So
Hmm.
I was working over on the space side. So any satellites, anything else we put up into space, all that needs to be encrypted. So we worked with the big companies like Raytheon, Lockheed Martin to develop that technology. So that's what I did in the Air Force. Had a great time. Loved what I did. Thought it was super impactful, but just wasn't my passion. And so I got introduced into real estate when I first moved to San Antonio. I
Mhm.
was just researching different business podcasts. Was a little bit tired of listening to music on my commute to and from work. So I found one called the Bigger Pockets podcast. And for most people that know real estate, probably know Bigger Pockets. It's like the gateway for pretty much anyone to get into real estate. So gave it a listen. Thought it was pretty cool. Just kept listening and decided let me do a little bit more research into this thing, see what this real estate investing is all about. So read some books, met with some mentors and all this other investors, mentors, and realized that this is a great way to build wealth, a great possible side hustle. And at that time, I was, didn't have any student debt because I was fortunate enough to go to the academy. I didn't have kids. I wasn't married. Didn't had a stable job. So if there was a time to take a risk, it was that time when I was 22 years old. So ended up buying my first investment property in 2019. And that was a REO or real estate owned property, basically a property that got foreclosed on by the bank and fixed it up, kept it as a rental property. Thought that wasn't too bad. And so ended up doing a flip later that year. And then just kind of been doing that on the side for a few years until about 2022 when I launched Murphy Home Buyers, or I partnered with my current business partner, Aaron, to start Murphy Home Buyers. And that's when I kind of realized that I wanted to jump into it full time after the military.
That's awesome. That it's funny. It's funny listening to you tell that story because it's so similar to mine. Like listening to podcasts, reading business books, like figuring out what I'm really interested in, and then decide, hey, why not? Because I've got this job. I've got no kids, not any crazy debts, and I've got this job that I know is going to pay me for 5 years. So let's do this thing. So
Mm.
it's funny listening to you tell that story because it's the same story as me. So you launched in 2022 Murphy Home Buyers. Talk about, I guess, that business, like the structure of it, and then like what are those product lines that you guys maybe offer? Like what do you guys offer to investors? What does that look like?
So my business partner, Aaron, he had been doing real estate full time for a couple years before I had. So I think back in 2021, 2020 is kind of when he was jumping into it full time. So he had a little bit more experience than me. But Murphy Home Buyers, the thing that we specialize in is finding off market deals or off market properties. So we do all of our marketing directly to sellers. And let me backtrack and say, like, when I say off market, this is properties that are not listed on like Zillow or you can't
Mhm.
find on the MLS. We go
Mhm.
directly to sellers before they even hit the market. So we do this through multiple marketing channels. We send out mail, we have TV ads running, online stuff, SEO, PPC, and we basically go to them and they might well, we're kind of like cash buyers. We give a lot of benefits to selling off market. We say, "Hey, we can buy it cash. We can close in as fast as a couple days, although we prefer at least a couple weeks. We don't do any sort of appraisals, no contingencies. We buy it as is. You don't have to do any repairs." And there's just a lot of benefits, but obviously we need to be buying things at a discount. That's how we make our money. And so we're very transparent with people that, hey, if you're looking for the most money, and you're not in a rush, like go sit on the market. We want what's best for you. But a lot of people, they have, a house that's been in disarray for one reason or another that needs fixing. They inherited a property that they don't really know much about. They're going through a messy divorce, might need money pretty fast, foreclosure, whatever it might be. There's a lot of reasons why people need to sell off market. And so that's kind of where we come in. And so we have a few different exit strategies once we contract these properties to buy. One of them is what we call wholesaling. And so wholesaling is pretty much when I have a contract to buy a property, and
Mhm.
then I will go find an investor that would like to buy the property for a higher price than what I had
Mhm.
contracted it at. And then I basically transfer them the rights to buy that property. And I add in what's called an assignment fee or just kind of like my little markup or finder's fee for finding them that deal. So that's one way we make money. A second way is what we call wholetailing. And wholetailing is when we actually buy the properties ourselves and then we list it as is on the market. So it might need a ton of repairs. We know it's going to go to a flipper or another investor, but we just list on the market knowing that, but we still have enough margin where we make money there. Third is fix and flip. This is the one that most people are familiar with. We buy it, we renovate it, and then we sell it for that higher price. And then fourth is rental properties. So we do keep some as rental properties. Stuff here in San Antonio doesn't cash flow super well just because our property taxes are a lot higher than other places in the
Mhm.
country. But every once in a while you come across, a good property, and we'd have both short-term rentals like Airbnbs, that type of thing, and also long-term rentals too. And I think rentals are a great way to build wealth. So just keeping some along the way, looking back in 20 years, you have a portfolio worth millions once you build that equity and appreciation, tax benefits, and all that. So that's kind of what we do, and the way we fund these projects is we take on a lot of private money lenders.
Mm,
They lend us money to fund these different projects because you're buying a house for 200,000, it might need 100,000 worth of work. We don't have $300,000 just liquid across 10, 20 different properties. We just don't have that capital, so that's where we bring in private money partners to help fund this stuff.
and when you bring those private money lenders, are those typically individuals, multiple individuals? What does that look like? Like, is it like, "Hey, we need 200 grand, we're gonna go find one investor." Is that great? Is that what you're looking for in a perfect situation? Or is it, "Hey, we'll find 4 people with 50 grand?"
Sure. So typically we like to do one for one. So one investor with one property. And
Okay.
we buy properties in the value of that ranges. I've bought stuff as cheap as we're buying a lot for 3,000. We're contracted to buy a lot for $3,000, right? And we also just bought a house at the end of last year for 2.1 million.
Wow.
So it very much ranges. I would say the average or the median tends to be around the 100 to maybe 250
Okay.
grand mark. And so the reason why we like doing that one to one, if at most maybe like two investors for one property, is just because the more hands you have in the pot, it just kind of messes things up. And we focus a little bit more on the residential side. So we buy a lot of single family houses,
Mhm.
2 to 4 units, mobile homes, condos, land. We do a little bit with commercial properties, but where you see a lot of different investors coming together to take down a property, that's a little bit more in the commercial space.
Mm.
And that's what we call syndication, and that's not really what I dabble in as of right now.
Got it, got it. And so when you're looking at your product lines, and you laid them out really nicely, like those 4,
Mhm.
when you're talking about wholesaling, hoteling, fix and flip, then rental properties, like, lay out, I guess, quickly, like, how long does that take, each of those take, right? Wholesaling, like, the way I see it, that's like market arbitrage. It's like almost like that's like a stock market, right? There's
Mhm.
when you
Sure.
trade on E-Trade, there's somebody between the buyer and the seller, and you're kind of that in the real estate. So, like, how quick does that happen?
And that happens that's probably the fastest, and
Yeah.
as we scale, we started to shift a little bit more to that because cycle time on money is something that's very important to us.
Mm.
So, that can be as quickly as, like, in a week to 2 weeks. It could be
Wow.
in as fast as maybe, like, a month or 2 or as slow as, like, a month or 2. Typically, sellers that sell to us usually want to sell a little bit faster. So as long as we go find a buyer for that property, we're good to close whenever. And if title is clear, because we run everything through a title company, make sure that these people selling to us have the rights to sell the property. But yeah, that's definitely the fastest exit strategy.
Okay, and then whole like a buy and list, the wholetailing, and then the fix and flip, those are, I can imagine, anywhere from 1 to 6 months kinda thing?
So, in my ideal world, everything would be less than 6 months, but a
Yeah.
lot of that's very market dependent. You go
Okay.
back to 2021, 2022, when the market was just crazy hot for sellers because of the low interest rates. I mean, we had one where we listed a wholesale as is on Friday. By Monday, we had 35 offers on it, like, going
Over
like
asking.
that.
Yeah.
Over asking, yeah, 35K over asking, no contingencies, waive the appraisal, all of it. It was crazy. And then you fast forward to, end of like 2023 this year where stuff has slowed down because interest rates had risen. And the average days on market, and this is very market dependent, but the average days on market in San Antonio is about like 70 days on market. So that means if you
Okay.
have something priced appropriately, it could take on average about 70 days for it sitting to sell. And then the closing process usually takes about another 30 days. So right now, our flips, typically take anywhere from 3 to 6, 7 months.
Okay.
Wholesales maybe like 1 to 3 months.
Sure.
And but we have had some that run long into the 9, 12 month mark.
And so you touched on it a little bit there. How has interest rates affected the business? I mean, because you launched this thing in 2022, kind of right as we're, depending on what month you launched it, right? As
Mhm.
rates are going from 3 to, average mortgage is going from like 3 to 6, like, overnight, it's seemingly. How has that been for you guys, and has that made things a little bit more difficult?
Yeah, we've enjoyed about 7 in 2022, we enjoyed about 7 to 8 months of that hot market, and so
Yeah.
back then, it was very hard to find deals because sellers were like, "I can just list on the market and it's gonna
Yeah.
be worth way more," or, "Why should I sell now? Because it's just gonna keep going up in value." And which, we don't like to speculate like that, but like it very well could.
Sure.
And so we enjoyed some of that. So it's harder to definitely find the deals, but once you contracted it and to sell it, super, super easy. Now for us, it is easy to find deals, but it's a little bit hard to find the buyers for it. But the nice
Mm,
thing about real estate investing is like the key players, the big players, they're always investing. Like the big guys in the market, like just because the interest rates go up, go down, like they still need to operate. They still need to produce revenue and generate income. So they're not completely just going to stop. So as long as you're buying stuff more conservatively and with bigger margin, that's kind of how we account for when the market slows down or the interest rates go up and that sort of thing.
okay, that makes sense. And as for like looking for money, or sorry, looking for properties, has that been what is tell me what that funnel looks like? Like if you're because I got a text like 2 days ago, and you get them every once in a while, but I got one 2 days ago, like, "Hey, are you looking at selling, your address or whatever?" Random number. Like,
Yep.
is that you? Is that you texting people? Like, what are the methods of reaching them, and what does it look like? Is it 100 people we contact? Is it 1,000 that funnels down to maybe 1 purchase? Like, what does that look
And
like?
so yeah, and so that's a form of marketing called just cold texting, right? You
Sure.
basically pull a list of houses, use what you call skip trace, so you find the owner, their contact info, and then you reach out to them. Interestingly enough, cold texting, there's a lot more red tape around it right now, and so we
Mm,
don't really touch it. And it's a low barrier to entry too, because it's very cheap to go and just send out like bulk texts. We don't really do that. Like I said before, our main marketing methods are mail, TV, online stuff. And we like that because it's a lot more costly. I'll spend 35 grand a month, just on marketing, but it's a higher barrier to entry, and it also, like, we the mindset with our company and what we wanna build around is we're a company that we want to run it as if we're gonna be around forever. So we want to use legitimate marketing sources. We want people to recognize the brand. And
mhm,
so that way, there's anything that we can't put our name on, we don't want to do. So the cold
mm,
texting, cold calling, a lot of the times they don't give you, if you text them back and ask them for the company name, like they won't give that to you because there's
mm,
a lot of red tape and regulation around it. And it's kind of like a no-no. So that's stuff, not stuff that we want to associate ourselves with. But as far as the other marketing methods go, typically what that looks like is we'll send mail out or we have TV ads running. People will call in, text in, and we have a CRM set up basically to house all of our leads. And
okay,
so our local team, we have one guy, he's titled a lead manager or inside sales guy. So anyone that calls, texts in, it comes to him. He basically qualifies them. Hey, is this an actual lead that we care about? If it is yes, then he'll go ahead and qualify them, get the information, and then push it to our sales guys for an appointment. And then those guys go out to the property. They'll meet the seller, they'll answer any questions they might have, take a look at the condition of the property, then bring all the information back to us. My business partner, Aaron, usually runs the numbers, says, hey, this is pretty much the max we can offer on it. Maybe start here. So you have a little bit of wiggle room from negotiations. And then we try to negotiate and lock up the deal then. So for us right now, our average like marketing cost per deal, we're spending somewhere around like 3,500 to 4 grand of marketing dollars to get a deal. And then right now we're averaging, the goal this year is to do about 12 deals every month is kind of what we're
wow.
averaging.
That was one of my
Yeah.
other questions is like, what is the deal flow? How many deals is it? 12 a month. So we're talking 144 deals this
That's
year.
the
That's the
goal.
target.
Yeah, that's the goal. And I would say maybe about 80% of those actually get to closing because a lot of them have a lot of title issue stuff, especially stuff with inherited properties. We've dealt
Sure.
with ones where there's like literally like 20 something heirs, and to get 20 something heirs on board to sign is can be a lot.
Sure.
But about 80% of that will close, and that's kind of the goal right now. And then we have our goals as far as the average profit we want to make per deal and all that
Sure.
other good stuff.
And I'm sure you have spreadsheets or systems tracking all of those, those metrics to know how much you're spending to get a deal and what the average profit is, right? And I guess
Yeah,
to put on my financial planner hat, like all those deals coming through, what about liquidity? Do you have like specific levels of liquidity you feel like the business must maintain? Like seems like there's a lot of money going on, changing hands, waiting on this to close, but then we want to buy this property. It's like I imagine you guys have a set floor or something that you have to maintain.
yeah, definitely. So when I take a look at that, we match private money to each
Sure.
deal. And so the way we structure that stuff is that they pretty much get paid all out in the back end. So all the interest and the point, so we typically offer, a certain amount of interest. We tell them like, hey, 10, 12% annualized interest is what you're going to get back on this. And we typically,
Okay.
once we go and sell the deal, that's when they get their principal plus the interest back. So we know there's not too much like holding costs over here. And we know what our like overhead costs are generally. And most of our employees are commission based. So if we're
Mm,
not like closing on deals, they're not getting paid. So the goal is like to create as little overhead as possible for us. But for me, like I typically like about 100K in the bank, and then we have lines of credit too and stuff that we can pull
sure.
from, probably like another 100K in lines of credit. So typically like that's enough. And there's definitely times when, there's ebbs and flows in the business. That's
Sure.
just the nature of it. But that's typically where we like to be around as of right now.
Sure. And so you talked about bringing in, you painted that picture really well for us, bringing in the deals. Now on the other side, bringing in the money. Do you have a similar marketing campaign for private money lenders? And what does that look like on that side? Is that harder, easier to get than the deals?
So I will say that starting off, let me backtrack a little bit. Starting off, we didn't always use private money. We use
Yeah.
something that's called hard money. I don't know if you're familiar with hard money lenders.
From your videos, I am. Yeah.
Okay, there you go. So hard money lenders for the audience, pretty much these are institutions or companies that specialize in short-term real estate investor friendly loans. So they're like, hey, this is a 12-month loan. We're going to charge you like, 14%, and we know that you're going to use it to fix and flip a property. And so that's typically where most newer investors will go to because they don't know a bunch of private money lenders. And so we still use them maybe about like 10, 20% of the time. We like to use private money, but sometimes we tap them out. But as far as the funnel for private money, I wish I could tell you that we had a great system and
Yeah.
process for all of it, but it was just one of those things where we organically were building our pool of private investors. We're always open to new ones. Most of our private investors are through word of mouth, which is pretty nice. And so we thought about trying to campaign for a little bit more, but as of right now, our focus and our energies on other things within the company.
And who do you think, in your opinion, like would be best suited to be a private money lender, like for you guys or a company like you guys? Like, is it anyone with 100K sitting around that they want to do something with? Like, is it because it is right? It is short term. There is, I imagine, another question of mine, like who assumes downside risk? There is got to be some level
Mhm.
of risk. Like, who is it best suited for? Is it suited for the person who's got 50 grand and like nothing else going and like maybe not like other investments, or is it more like, hey, this is a small portion of our portfolio, we're gonna do this money lending thing?
So we typically the lowest loan amounts we'll take is probably around the 30K mark, and we have
Hmm.
people that are probably go up to like $1 million. So
Okay.
anywhere within that, and this is more for the person that has money sitting around,
Yeah.
and even as you probably know, like in a self-directed IRA or something like that
Sure.
too, it can be a retirement account, and just money that people don't need right away. Like if you're like, hey, I'm about to have a kid, I only got 20 grand in the bank, I don't have any other savings. Like
No.
save that for emergency, please. Like don't be trying to like out there
Yeah.
like day trading or giving it to us, but it's for money that people just have sitting around and they're not looking to deploy that anytime within, the next year or so. And so all of our loans, they're typically shorter. When I write up the notes and everything like that, I usually make it for 9 months, and then there's an option to extend 3 months to the 12-month mark for an additional like fee or point. And the way we structure everything is we create all the documents for them to tie their loan to the property. So their loan is secured by the property, and we use that as collateral. And so what that looks like is here in Texas, and it probably varies by state, but we have three different documents that we use. The first document that we use is a promissory note. So it's pretty much like the agreement between us and the investor. Hey, they're loaning us this much money at this rate for this long. The second document we give them is the deed of trust, and that is kind of like a mortgage. We use deeds of trust here, but it's very similar to a mortgage where it says, pretty much like, hey, if we can't pay them for some reason, like they can foreclose on the property and at least have that to show for. And then third is a warranty deed with the vendor's lien that pretty much puts a lien on the property for them. So that way we can't go and try to like sell around them and like keep their money and the proceeds of the property. Any title company that runs it, when we go to sell a property, they will like their lien will pop up. And so we have to pay off that lien or pay them in order to sell the property. And so as far as like level of risk goes, I always tell everyone like investing is inherently risky. Like you can't, there's
Yeah.
no perfect investment out there. But the way we set everything up is no matter how we do on the deal, it doesn't affect their rate or their loan or anything like that. They are like a bank doesn't care, like, if you lost your job, couldn't make the payment, like, they just don't want their money. So we've had properties where we give them projections like, "Hey, on this one, I think we'll make 30K, it'll take, like, 2
Yeah.
months." It may have taken a year instead, and we may have lost 30K. But
Yeah.
to them, like, they got their money back as if it doesn't matter how we performed. Or on the other hand, if we killed it and we made an extra 100K, they still get their agreed
Sure.
upon rate. And so nothing's perfect. I can't like ever say that like there's zero possibility we'll
Sure.
default, but we've done hundreds of these at this point, never defaulted. And so I think that speaks to why most of our investors come through word of mouth.
Yeah, that's awesome. That just says to me you guys are doing a really good job managing risk just at the company level. Because it seems to me like, hey, we can give people their money back and the agreed upon interest only if like the company is doing
Mhm.
well and we're fine losing 30 grand on one property and we don't want to ruin our rep. Back to your point about the reputation.
Yeah.
Like even though we got killed on this deal, we want the investor to get out alive. So it means you guys are doing a good job, especially in this interest rate environment, this interesting real estate environment we're in right now, managing risk across the company. The business, how many employees do you guys have? And I guess what kind of structure is it? Is it a LLC, S corp? Like
Yeah,
what
so we just have an LLC right now.
Okay,
But right now, so it's my business partner and myself, we own the company. And then
okay,
we have 4 local employees. So we have one that's that lead manager I was talking about before. We have 2 acquisition managers, and they're like the sales guys going to people's houses, making offers, negotiating. And then we're actually switching one of those guys over to like we call it a disposition manager, like I was talking about wholesaling before. We have the seller and the contract, but we need just a lot of time to find the buyer and coordinate that. So we're kind of moving one guy over there to handle like relationships with the buyers
okay,
and matching the buyers to the deals. And then the fourth position we have is a construction manager. So and the renovations that we have going on, he pretty much handles all that for us, or else my whole day would just be driving around to different properties and wasting gas that way. And then we also have 2 remote or virtual employees. And so one of them is kind of like an
okay.
admin type position. And then the other one, I call him my systems engineer. So as we build the company, we want to create documentation processes, SOPs for everything. And I was trying to write these out for the longest time and I just like didn't have the time. So I said, let me hire someone. So his job is literally like anything I need documented, like it can be as simple as like, hey, how do I turn on utilities, electric at this house, right? And he creates a step-by-step process for how to do that. So that way, when I hire someone on and I give them a task, they can go to this, repository of information and know exactly at like a fifth grade level, like this is how you do the thing. And so I think that's important to us as we grow the company to have those standard operating procedures.
And as you grow this company, what's the dream? What's the future? Like 10-year, I don't know, what's the 10-year vision? The vision, I go back to like military, stuff, vision,
Mhm.
mission. Like what is that for you guys? What is it gonna be like we dominate San Antonio real estate? Like what is it for you guys?
So that's something that constantly changes. I mean, I know every business coach and stuff out there will say like you need like a 1, 3, 5 year plan.
Yeah.
The reason why it kind of changes for us because there are some days where like we just want to take over the world, right? And then there are other days where we see what other people are doing, and it just seems kind of like a big headache because at a certain point you just get way too much overhead, and it can be a headache. So for us, as of right now, if basically my business partner and I were like, "Hey, we wanna, like, net, like, $1,000,000 each pretty much, and what does that look like?" So for us to do that, we would have to be doing probably, like, 50% more than what we're doing right now,
Mhm.
and so that's kind of the goal, but it's not as easy as just, trying to do that in a year. It's probably gonna take another few years, if everything goes right to do that, and then at that point, like, if we can net somewhere between, the 750, a million, then hire someone to kind of take over running the business, which is why I wanted to create those SOPs.
Mhm.
And then even if that means we take a pay cut, whatever, but I can only spend 5 hours in the business instead of 50 hours a week in the business, that'd be ideal. And then, like, if we want to go tackle other things within the real estate industry, just being free to do that.
That's awesome. That's great. You guys sounds like you guys have some sort of, something that you're marching towards, and good reasons for doing that. For you, like it sounds like is business ownership like I guess why is business ownership so important to you versus like going to get a job? It sounds like, you've got this ideal life, a certain income, and then like also on the other side of that, hey, I don't want to work 50 hours a week necessarily for my whole life. I might have a family at some point. Is that
Mhm.
kind of where your brain is going with that?
Sure. So I before I decided to jump into entrepreneurship full time, I was offered a job as I was getting out of the military to do
Yeah.
some consulting stuff within like the DoD acquisition realm, and so they were going to pay me a pretty good amount, and I was it was pretty attractive. But ultimately, what the deciding factor was it's like I asked myself like, what am I passionate about, and what's the thing like I want to wake up to and do every single day. And that's at the end of the day, I told myself entrepreneurship. And so people ask me, like, what are your hobbies? Like, yes, I enjoy working out. I enjoy traveling. I love hanging out with my wife. But like I just am so blessed that I get to do what I want to do, even though there's like, stressful times, obviously, for running a
Hmm.
business. It's like if I have free time, like I enjoy the hard work. I enjoy building things. I enjoy building a company. And so that's what just like the hard work is the thing that kind of is like the motivator and fueling thing for me. And people always told me like, hey, you want financial freedom. You want to, be able to like sit on the beach and do nothing. And I'm like, I thought that would be cool, but I'd probably be over that after, like, the first 3 months. Like, to me, I don't money like, when money doesn't become an issue, you just, like, purely enjoy the work. I think that's when you kind of hit that, like, financial freedom thing, and, just being able to take care of also, like, my family, my friends, like, those I care about, taking care of them, and then also giving back to, like, charity and, like, the things that I really care about. That's kind of my big why there. So, yeah, that's kind of why I wanna do it. I'm just, like I said, super blessed to get into the entrepreneurship route, and the last thing I'll say too is, like, I'm not knocking anything for W-2, like, there are tons of people with great jobs
Yeah.
out there, love what they do, and not everyone has a knack for the entrepreneurship thing too, because it is, like, very hard. But I just very recently too, I've been seeing, a lot of, like, people that I care about just either struggling with their jobs as far as satisfaction or, being let go, especially in the market that we're in, we're kinda seeing, especially in, like, the
Hmm.
tech world,
Oh yeah.
we're seeing that happen a lot, and just the fact that an employer at any time can be like, "Thanks for being here for 10 years, but, like, we're gonna have to let you go on a whim." Like, that's to me, that's very risky too in a sense. So, it's the last thing I'll say with that.
No, absolutely. You hit the nail on the head, and it's very similar for me as well. Like I've told people before, like I'd rather just once I've gotten into this entrepreneurship and business owner thing. Now that I've experienced it, I mean, I don't think I could ever go back. I think you probably say the same. And I, take the money out of the situation. Even if I was to make more W-2, which I don't think in the end I would, but even if I was to make more on at W-2, I just I'd rather be my own boss, have my own schedule, call my own shots. And to the risk part of it, so right too. I mean, the business I'm in, I have clients, you have investment, you have properties, you have money lenders, you have all these things that you're doing. If one deal falls through, your income's not going to zero. But if you work for Amazon or whoever it is and they cut down your whole division, you're gone.
Mhm,
So I think risk when you look at risk in business ownership, certainly early on is very risky, very challenging, but is super rewarding if you stick it out. Now to that challenging part, it might look to people on the outside like Jason's just like anybody, anybody could do this. Jason's just he's so successful. Everything's been so easy for him. Like, what's been, I guess, the biggest challenge for you in building this business? Maybe early on, like even mentally, I can tell you for me, like just having to go into my Air Force job and then coming home and like worrying about my business all night and weekend, like that was a struggle for me. So what was it for you? I guess early on.
So I would say that at a certain point, like it can become all consuming. And that was something that, my wife had to kind of rein me back in, right? Like it's very easy to be like,
For
I
sure.
literally eat, sleep, and breathe this stuff.
Yeah.
And you have to realize like you have other responsibilities, like your family needs you and you it's like not everything can be about work because it can be very easily turn into that. And then you become that like 45-year-old person that, like, all they do is work 80 hours a week, and they don't spend any time with their family. So, I would say that is definitely something. And then the other thing too, and that's something that I'm learning right now, is once you hire employees, it is a big, like, learning curve on how to be a leader and a manager. And I know
Mm,
this is stuff that they, like, put down our necks all the time back at the academy and once you're in the military as an officer. But a lot of that is so true. Like, I always thought that, trying to find deals and do this and that was the hard part. Like, the hard part's the people. Like
yeah.
hiring the right people, managing the right people. That's like the factor that's not really within your control. So that's something that I'm still trying to learn and grow with.
Yeah, leadership's hard. I learned that when I was in the Air Force, just with a small, like, just as a little flight
Mhm.
commander, as a second lieutenant, had military members that were like 25, all the way up to like
Yeah.
contractors and GS civilians that are 60 and know so much more than me. So I mean, that's hard in any context, in or out of the military. What would be your advice, maybe to others, somebody who's listening to this podcast, is thinking about or is in the middle of starting their kind of entrepreneurship journey, whether it's real estate or another business? What would you say be some tidbits of advice?
So I would say the biggest thing, one, is take action on whatever you do. I go to real estate meetups and that sort of thing, and I can't tell you the amount of people that I meet that go to meetups every single month for the past
Yeah.
3, 4 years, and they keep telling me I'm gonna do a deal. Like I'm gonna deal. This is the year I'm gonna do a deal. I'm like, you've been saying this for the past like 4 years. Like at one certain point, you gotta just take action, and you got to just take that jump. Like it's gonna be scary for sure, but as long as you're educated, you make informed decisions. You have people that are guiding you that you can trust. You're gonna have to take that jump. So one is definitely taking action. Don't get stuck in that analysis paralysis, is what I call it. And then the second thing is consistency with everything. So consistent work doing the right thing will yield you results, even if it's just a little bit. So the biggest thing too is people might take action, but they're like, oh well, I'm busy today, so I'll do it tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and it's the same thing. Like even if it's just like 1 hour a day, 30 minutes a day, whatever it might be, like commit to that and actually do it. And you'll see like you'll look back and you'll be much farther along than you realized.
Yeah, I'll double down on that 100%. That's something I take from just my sports background. Just in like our coach in our hockey coach in college was always, we don't coach the scoreboard. Like we coach how you guys are playing. Like we need to do the right things. Scoreboard is the result, right? So for you or for any business owner, that's, hey, I need to show up and do the right things. Just because I get a client or a property, that doesn't, or I don't, that doesn't dictate what I'm doing. The things that I control. So that's awesome advice. All right, man. Well, this has been so great having you on. We'll wrap on that note. Where can people find you? Maybe connect with you. Maybe learn a little bit more about Murphy and what you guys do.
Absolutely. So love it when anyone reaches out with anything, happy to help. So probably Instagram is the best way. So I'm on Instagram, investor Jason Lee. And then they can shoot me an email too at Jason at Murphy. That's Murphy, home, HOME, buyers, BUYERS.com. And you can reach me there as well if you don't use Instagram or social media.
All right, awesome. And we'll have all that in the show notes for you guys, as well as Jason's LinkedIn, the Alamo City Investing Show, and just the Murphy Home Buyers site. So thanks so much again for coming on, man. This is great. Been way too long since we caught up. So this has been awesome. Long overdue.
Yeah. Great conversation. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Thanks, Jason. And we will be back next week with another episode. Thanks, guys. Thank you for joining us today. Do you want the exact financial planning framework that I use with clients? Go visit baskinfp.com, where you can grab a free download of the ultimate military and veteran financial checklist to give you the BLUF on what you need to be doing to manage your finances. We'll be back next week with some more content to help you on your journey to financial freedom. See you then. This is a friendly reminder that the BLUF Finance Podcast is general and educational in nature and does not constitute tax, investment, legal, or financial advice with respect to any particular individual or taxpayer. Please consult with your own tax, legal, financial, and other advisors regarding your own unique situation.